In that look, there was more pain than words could explain. It was the end, and he knew it. The camera approaches slowly. His eyes don't blink. They are full of tears, not with tears, but with silence. A silence that carries years of sacrifice. A whole life dedicated to someone who, in the end, didn't even look back. It was just another day, but not for him, because at that moment, he understood. He was abandoned by the one he trusted most. This is not just a story about an animal and its owner. It's a story about unrecognized sacrifice, about injustice, and about the pain of those who gave everything and were still left behind. How many times have you felt discarded? Have you dedicated yourself so much, given everything, endured in silence, and in the end, been forgotten as if nothing had mattered? This story is about an ox, but it could be about any of us. For years, he was more than strength. He was a partner. He helped build the land, pulled the weight of the crops, faced the scorching sun and the cold mud, endured the fatigue, the beating, the hunger, the rain. No complaining, without question, just doing it, because that's how he learned to serve. While many only saw one animal, the boss knew that ox was special, more obedient than many men, more loyal than a friend, more resistant than any machine. But as is common in the real world, loyalty does not guarantee love. Sacrifice does not guarantee gratitude. And when he got old, slow, tired, the decision was quick. Discard. The camera now shows the field, empty, silent, where before there were firm steps and the strong breathing of those who carried everything on their backs. Now only the echo of abandonment remains. This is the kind of pain that doesn't appear on the news. It is the silent pain of what is useful that has become a nuisance. The pain of the faithful who is discarded as dead weight. It's the wound that arises when you give yourself whole and realize that you've never really been seen. Maybe you've already felt this on your skin. Maybe someone in your family. Maybe your father, who worked all his life and was forgotten. Or your mother, who sacrificed herself for everyone, but today cries alone in a corner. Or maybe you're living it right now. This story is more than moving. It is a mirror, because each of us, at some point, has been that ox. We gave everything. We received nothing, and yet we were left along the way as if we had never existed. And the worst, that's when abandonment doesn't come with screams, come with silence, with turning your back, with the simple act of ignoring someone who was once everything to you. And there he was, standing in the pasture, smelling the earth, watching the boss's car drive away. That he understood. Life is sometimes cruel to those who deserve the most affection, with whom he served the most, with the one he loved most. But that's not the end of the story, because in that look, in that last look he gave before the boss disappeared down the road, there was still something more. And that's what you'll see now. He believed their love was true. He clearly remembers that day when the sun set and the entire field seemed to breathe relief after so much work. The ox, which already carried so much, walked alongside the master as if it were part of his own hope. The boss smiled. The boss's wife entered the gate with clean hands and a calm look. There were plans, dreams, promises, and the ox, silent, firm, continuous, was a witness to everything. The strength of the work, the sweat shed, the earth loaded, the harvest divided. He was never just a farm animal. He was a symbol of dedication, of absolute loyalty, that delivery that many humans avoid. And the boss, in turn, seemed genuine in his appreciation. He patted the ox's back with respect, offered quality hay, cared for it in drought, protected it in winter. The boss's wife commented at some lunch after work about how that ox was different. "He understands us," she said, laughing as she stroked the animal's fur. And the ox, with big, serene eyes, accepted the affection, inclined his head, as if he knew there was recognition there. It was love. That's how it seemed. Real love. Not the romanticized fairy tale, but the love of those who live together, of those who depend, of those who make the journey together. An invisible bond formed between him and his boss. He carried more than burdens. He carried dreams. Dreams of a boss who wanted to grow, prosper, guarantee a better life for his family. The ox was part of that, and he knew it, or at least he felt it. I felt the trot turning into a steady step, the pulling of the cart, the silence of the early morning, the creaking of the wooden wheel. He was there, always there, and in the happiest moments, oh, those moments, the ox also knew. There was laughter in the air. There was the smell of freshly brewed coffee on the balcony. There was the boss's wife taking photos of the family by the plantation at sunset. There were children running on the ground, climbing on the gentle back of the ox, playing 1, 2, 3. That's it. And the ox let him. He let him because he wanted to participate, because even without words, he participated, and it was part of the joy. They planned trips at the end of the harvest. They promised days of rest in the shade of leafy trees. There were dreams of renovating the house, of a big harvest party, of inviting neighbors, of showing the world that together they had won. The ox was the protagonist of this story, or so he felt. I felt I deserved this. Recognition, care, affection. And then the boss's wife appeared. A soft face, with an easy smile, with a gentle hand gesture. At first she seemed completely innocent. That was the vision of the ox and the master, certainly. She took care of the house, helped on the farm, participated, and the ox felt safe with her. There was a strange but comfortable harmony. The trio seemed balanced. Boss, wife, ox. A trio that seemed invincible, and every morning the ox woke up early, stood up under the sky that was still shy of light, feeling the shiver of the breeze on his skin. He took a deep breath and prepared himself for the day. And the boss, next door, opened the gate, exuding faith. "Come on, old friend," he would say, as one human would say to another, and the ox responded with a firm, confident look. They walked together to the fields, to work, to the sun, to life. And at the end of the day, when the harvest had finally yielded its first fruits, the boss exclaimed with satisfaction, "We did it today!" And he looked at the ox, which was sweating, panting, but still keeping pace. And the boss's wife brought fresh water, relieved the ox, and said, "You were incredible." And the ox then seemed to relax because, yes, he was amazing. He was more than expected. He was indispensable. That was the routine. This was the story of those who sacrifice themselves in silence, from those who deliver without demanding, from someone who gives without waiting. And it makes me wonder, how many times have you put yourself in this position? How many times have you worked for someone who didn't even realize your loyalty? How many times was your sacrifice invisible? If this has ever happened to you, comment there. I have. You identify yourself. It shows that you are here with an open heart. But then, in the middle of this perfect day, the first cracks began. Not in the ox, he remained firm, but in the feeling, in what seemed eternal and true. The boss's wife, who always said you were incredible, now started to look at it differently. Their smiles were slow to come. His praise became less and less. The boss, busy with business, with greater hopes, with heavy debts, began to pay less attention to the ox. Morning walks became automatic work. The "let's go, old friend" became "it's already done." And the ox, with its silent sensitivity, felt it. He felt something change. The routine still existed, but the bond was loosening. The affection that came from the boss's wife was no longer directed at him as before. Now it was focused on the farm, on business, on new priorities. He saw, he noticed. How many times have you noticed that the affection that seemed firm suddenly becomes distant? If the video touches you, comment "same" and let's see what's coming together. And then came the day of the broken promise. The boss, in front of the house with children in his arms, smiled at the ox and said, "When this harvest is over, we're going to have that Thanksgiving party. You'll be there." The ox let out a soft neigh, as if accepting the invitation. He participated, he believed, but the ox didn't know that the promise wasn't for him. He didn't know that behind the scenes, the boss's wife was answering phone calls late at night. He didn't know that, while the boss was talking about the party, his attention was divided. He didn't know that a sacrifice of years could become invisible in the eyes of those who promised everything. And that ox, with a faithful heart, continued to pull, to obey, to serve, even when the silence weighed more than the lash, even when the shadow of ingratitude became longer than the sun he faced. And the moment came when he looked back and realized the boss was no longer looking at him. The boss's wife no longer smiled at him. The ox was there, firm but alone. In the field, the noise of wheels echoed. The cart passed. The boss saw the ox as a strength, as a resource, no longer as a companion. The ox felt abandoned. He felt the emptiness. He felt that love was just an illusion. That's when the betrayal took shape. Not that betrayal of words spoken, of grandiose gestures, of shouts. It was the betrayal of the look that stopped recognizing, of the smile that disappeared, of the promise that evaporated. It was the betrayal of ingratitude that was installed in the silence. And when the boss's wife stepped into the field with steps that didn't match her routine, the ox saw her. He saw glances exchanged, whispers near the fence, laughter that was no longer shared. But the ox didn't complain. He continued. Because he always believed, he always donated, he always waited. And now I ask you, have you ever felt this way? Have you ever lived in a relationship where all the weight was yours and the another seemed to walk far away? If so, write yes in the comments now and share what you felt. I want this video to be our mirror, our truth. And the boss's wife discreetly began to remove the ox from the most visible tasks. He began to give preference to new machines, shiny tractors, promises of modernization. The ox stayed at the bottom, in the shadow, still operational, still useful, but left behind. The boss said he did it for progress, for the future, and the ox believed, because it served, because he was faithful, because I wanted to be part of it. He wanted the love to be true and the gratitude to appear. He waited, but gratitude seemed to sleep. In the silence of the night, when the ox was in the chute, he looked at the road, waiting for the boss to return with food, to talk, to touch his fur. But the boss was coming quickly now. He dispatched the work, ignored the animal's gentle gaze, looked at the diesel machine, at modernity that knew no sacrifice. And the ox, poor thing, felt abandonment didn't come with a slap. It came with forgetfulness, and that's what hurts. It's not explicit violence. It is the story suppressed, the value denied, the sacrifice that became an expense rather than a memory. The ox remained there, in the field, under the vast sky, feeling the cold wind that carried the scent of betrayal. He remembered sunny days, the palm on his back, his boss's smile, his wife's affection, and now, nothing. Just the echo of the machine's screams, the rustling of new tires, the long silence. And even then, even when he already knew he was being left out, he continued. He continued because he always believed that his loyalty was worth something. He continued because deep down he knew he was more than an ox, more than brute force. He knew he had a soul, if an animal can have one, but he felt it. He felt he had dignity that deserved respect, and the boss, looking at him, would sometimes give a quick wave. "Good job," he said without looking in the eye. The boss's wife would sometimes pass by and say, "Thank you," without genuinely touching or smiling. The ox accepted, because he accepted so many times, because hope lived in him, the hope that love, that gratitude, would manifest. And when the promised party would finally be organized, the ox waited for the invitation. He wanted to be in the center, surrounded by family, applause, recognition. He wanted to hear, "Without you, this wouldn't be possible." But the invitation never arrived. The ox saw the tractors lined up, the stage set up, the lights on. He saw the boss smile with his wife, with the neighbors, with his friends. He saw the ox, ancient hero, forgotten feverishly in the corner of the stable, and the betrayal became visible. The boss's wife, laughing with others, exchanging stories that didn't include the ox, made the ox understand that love was just marketing, that the sacrifice was just a cost, that abandonment came sneakily, like someone who takes the air and doesn't say goodbye. If this bothers you, if you feel this pain of someone who was faithful and was forgotten, comment "betrayed" now. Let that feeling out. Share without fear, because this story needs to be told. Because sad stories of abandonment, of ingratitude, of sacrifice without retribution need to resonate. He, the ox, spoke little, but his silence screamed. And that scream you will hear now. And at that moment, when the music subsided, when the sky turned grey, the ox took the last step towards the fence. He looked at the boss who was driving away with his wife at his side, planning the next harvest, the next party, the next investment. And the ox realized that for them, he was already past. That love was invested in the new, in the machine, in capital. And the old, the faithful, the sacrificed were left behind. He looked, he saw, he felt it. And so, without fanfare, without exaggerated drama, the ox turned to pasture. The wind rustled the leaves of the lonely tree. The ox exhaled a deep sigh, if there is such a thing as a sigh in an animal, and let out a low, almost inaudible neigh. It was the ox speaking in silence. I was here. I existed, and I still deserve to be remembered. And the camera slowly pulls back. The image extends, the empty pasture, the setting sun, the small ox against the giant field, the brutal silence, visible ingratitude, the palpable abandonment. And yet he remains steadfast, as if he still hopes, waiting for something that would never come. I waited for a goodbye that was more than words, wait for a look that returns what was given, and that's why this story touches. Because in the end, it's us. Maybe you, maybe me, maybe someone watching right now, maybe someone who carried too much, dedicated too much, offered too much, and was left behind. Maybe someone who looks at the past and sees empty promises, who feels the silent betrayal, who lives the pain of being used and forgotten, and you feel the betrayal of those who promised, or those who never promised but still took it. And while the ox is there, looking into space, the boss walks away, the engine roars, the lights in the house go out, the ox remains. Silent, still faithful, because what matters, he believes, is that he did his part. He pulled, he delivered, he endured. He showed what loyalty means. He showed what sacrifice means. He showed what it means to give and to set aside. And yet, he was forgotten. If you feel this pain of abandonment, ingratitude, unappreciated sacrifice, comment, "I know," and tell me what you did, how you turned out. I want to know. Let's talk. Because this story is not just his. It belongs to many. And you deserve to be seen too. You deserve to be remembered too. And now, let's move on without looking back. Because the next part of the story will show the moment of truth, the moment when he discovers that not every sacrifice is valued, that not every life lasts forever, that not all promises are kept. Let's see how the ox faces that moment that would change everything, and how he reacts when he realizes that love was a facade and gratitude was an overdue credit. Let's go together. It was a cloudy afternoon, the kind in which the sky seems to carry in its chest the same anguish that lives hidden in its heart. The field was quiet, the wind passed sharply, and the ox remained under the shade of a tree with its eyes fixed on the dirt road. He no longer expected to be called. I no longer waited for the boss's firm hands pulling the rope or the woman's laughter trying to alleviate the hardness of the day. But something that afternoon was different, and he felt it. Deep in my soul, a strange discomfort was forming, as if the earth itself knew something was wrong. The smell of the room was filled with silence, but it was not the calm silence of someone resting. It was the silence of someone hiding. Who betrays? And it was at that exact moment that he saw it. The boss's car, which always left early and returned before sunset, now returned later with its headlights on, as if wanting to avoid confronting the eyes of the countryside. But the ox was there. Property. Observing. And there was no more hiding it. The boss's wife went down first. She never did that. It was always the boss who came down, picked up the bag of supplies, adjusted the tires on the wooden gate. But now she came down in a hurry, with a strange bag in her hands, and eyes that avoided any direction, except the one where the ox was, as if the ox's gaze was capable of piercing the mask she wore. The boss came soon after, not with the heavy eyes of someone who worked hard, but with a sweaty, nervous face, like someone hiding something that shouldn't have been seen. He avoided looking at the field. He avoided looking at the ox. He entered the house as if the weight of the door could also lock away the guilt, but he couldn't. The ox, standing in the same position, continued to look, and it was there, in that seemingly small instant, that everything began to fall apart. Later, when night fell and the silence became deeper, the ox discreetly approached the fence that separated the corral from the porch of the house. From inside, muffled voices escaped through the cracks in the wood, contained laughter, whispered words, and then he listened. He didn't understand everything, it's true. After all, he was just an animal. But the tone, the gestures, the smiles that didn't match the time, the absence of any mention of work, the field, the routine, everything said what the words didn't need to. This was not companionship. That was another kind of exchange. It was the kind of thing that only happens when someone who promised to be there starts to make room for someone else to take their place. The ox couldn't explain it, but he knew how to feel it. He felt the betrayal in the air, in the way the woman smiled, in the way the boss seemed too light, as if he had left a weight behind. And the ox understood. He was the burden. There, on that sultry night, he realized he had been replaced, not for another ox, not by a machine, but for an idea, for a new version of life where he no longer fit, where he was just a memory, where he was cost, where he was the past that needs to be erased so that the future shines without a shadow. And the worst part, no one told him that. The betrayal came without a word, no letter, no conversation. It came through a deafening silence. Through gestures not made, looks not exchanged, touches avoided. It came through absence, the one that screams more than any presence. The next morning, the ox continued his routine. Yes, even after the discovery, it didn't break. He didn't rebel. The cart didn't turn over. He just continued, and that perhaps was even more painful, because now every step was heavier. Each load pull was more bitter. He no longer walked with hope. He walked with the weight of his conscience. He knew the truth, but he still served. The boss avoided looking at him. The woman passed by in the distance, and the ox, faithful to the end, kept pace. Not because he didn't feel it, but because his essence was to serve. Because your whole life has been this, giving, enduring, assuming tar, even when everything hurt inside. And you who are watching now, have you experienced this? Have you ever discovered a betrayal and still stayed there pretending nothing happened? Have you ever endured pain in silence just to not lose what little was left? Comment, I've seen it, if this part of the story reminded you of something you experienced or felt. Sometimes, just by sharing, the pain lessens a little. The ox continued watching. The signs were everywhere. The boss's new routine, the whispers, the trips without explanation, longer and longer absences. The way the boss's wife looked at him, not with affection, but in a hurry, as if he were an obstacle, as if he were a burden that needed to get out of the way for the new plans to work. And the ox, poor thing, he knew, I knew, but I couldn't do anything. There was no way to confront it. There was no way to speak. All he could do was feel everything. Swallow the pain, carry the load, and pretend I hadn't seen it. But he saw it. He saw everything. He saw his boss smiling the way he no longer smiled at him. He saw the woman touching her boss's arm with the same gesture that was once used to caress him. He saw the party being organized, the one that was promised to him, now being prepared without the slightest mention of its existence. And he saw mainly the lack of interest, looking away, the rush to leave, the sound of the car leaving without even a wave. That was the confrontation, not with screams, not with harsh words, but with the truth thrown in his face like a bucket of ice water. The truth that even after everything he did, he was nothing more, that his presence was no longer felt, that his absence would be easily replaced. And that truth hurt. It hurt more than any whip, more than any physical wound, because the pain of no longer being seen by those you always viewed with respect is the pain that hurts the most. The pain of being erased from the history you helped build. If this touched you in any way, comment now. I felt this here in the comments. Tell me if this story is hurting inside too, because I'm reading everything. We will continue this together, because the hardest part is yet to come. What this ox will face now will make you rethink what loyalty is and how much it is worth being faithful. And it was the next day that everything reached the point where there was no turning back. The morning dawned strangely. The grey sky seemed to weigh more than normal. The wind, which used to blow like a breeze, now cut like a knife. The smell of the earth was stronger, drier. The silence, that was the worst. Not the silence of those who sleep, but the silence of those who already know what will happen and cannot stop it. And the ox, he felt it. I felt like that day would be my last. There was no touch. There was no word. The boss approached with hurried steps without looking at the ox. The woman at the side was carrying something on her arm, a new rope. He knew what it meant. It was the same rope they used when an animal needed to be taken, but wouldn't come back. The ox looked at her, and she, for a second, hesitated, as if his conscience was screaming, as if the memory of that animal's loyalty weighed on his shoulders. But it was only an instant. Then she looked away. He preferred to pretend it wasn't her. That moment had no history, that animal standing before her had not passed. It had no name, it had no soul. The boss tied the rope in a hurry, and the ox in silence did not resist. He didn't back down, it didn't pack, just accepted, because he knew. He knew there was no more room for him in that story. He knew that the harvest applause wasn't for him, that recognition would never come, that the love he believed he had was nothing but useful. The ox walked one step at a time with the weight of its wounded dignity. At every meter he looked around as if searching for a living memory, like someone trying to remember when they were loved, from when it was necessary, from when it was everything. And then halfway, before reaching the truck, he stopped. It stopped without warning, without resistance, without reaction. It just stopped and looked. He looked straight into his boss's eyes, a direct, deep, long look, not begging, not out of revolt, but from someone who, even though he was hurt, still had something to say. And that's where time stopped. The boss, for the first time in a long time, stared back. And in that instant, he saw everything. He saw the years of partnership, the days of sun and rain, the weights carried, the nights of pain. He saw the faithful friend who never complained, who never turned his face, who never denied help. And now there in front of him was the reflection of his own ingratitude, a cruel mirror of everything he chose to forget. He felt something inside his chest tighten, but he didn't say anything, didn't act. He just looked away, like someone ashamed of his own choice. The boss's wife stood behind, silent, watching, and for a brief moment she looked too, and that's when it happened. The ox standing still with the rope around its neck, he turned his face towards her, and his eyes, tired, teary, shining in silence, said everything the voice never could. There was no hate, there was no grudge, there was only one question: why? And it was in that look that she fell apart, because she understood, too late, But you understand. He understood that no progress, no profit, no new machine in the corral would be able to erase the presence of that animal. That no gift replaces a story built with pain, sweat, and dedication. That what she failed to see, the soul behind the ox's eyes, was precisely what gave meaning to the farm, to work, to life. But now it was too late. The truck driver shouted, "Shall we go?" And the boss pulled the rope. The ox, without hesitation, followed. But before crossing the gate, he stopped once more. He turned his neck slowly, and he took his last look, a long look, silent, deep, the kind of look you don't forget. That's it, what a brand. What hurts? That was goodbye, unspoken but felt. The last look of a betrayed heart, the end of a story of sacrifice that was never valued. And all that was left was the echo of that moment when the boss and his wife finally realized that they had lost something that time would not bring back. If you felt that moment inside, comment now. I saw that look. If you've ever had to say goodbye to someone or something without justice, without gratitude, without recognition, leave it here in the comments. This is the space where your emotions are welcome. Let's move on together, because the story isn't over yet. And there's more pain ahead, you will see. The truck drove away slowly, raising dust on the dry road. Behind, the wooden gate creaked in the wind, as if silently protesting their departure. The house was still standing intact. The plantation was still green. The sky was still open. But something in that place had died. The same sound was no longer heard. It no longer felt the same heat. And without even realizing it, the boss and his wife had just buried the most honest part of that story. As the vehicle disappeared over the horizon, the ox remained still for a moment inside the body, with its tired body and its gaze fixed behind it. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but I knew where I was coming from. I knew that that piece of land that was once home was now just a reminder that loyalty doesn't always have value. And it was there, in the silence of the road, that he learned one of the bitterest lessons in life. Not all smiles are sincere. For years, he believed. He trusted the gestures, in words, in the routine. He thought care was love, let the caress be gratitude, that the coexistence was respectful. But time has shown that all of this could be a facade. It may be momentary. It might be convenient, because the same smile that one day welcomes can be the same one that ignores. The same look that one day comforts can be the same one that diverts. And the same hand that feeds can be the one that pushes in the abyss of loneliness. And the cold, hard truth is that sometimes silence says more than 1,000 words. And that silence, what remained in the corral after the match, what dominated the balcony where there was already laughter, what filled the space between the boss and his wife, that silence screamed. He screamed that there was no longer a soul there, that everything that was true left along with the ox. His absence was immediately present. The routine that seemed automatic suddenly became empty. The morning footsteps no longer had an echo. The cart, standing still covered in dust, reminded everyone of what used to be movement. And even if the boss tried to follow, put another animal or even a new machine in its place, nothing would replace what was built with true commitment. Because the machine doesn't feel, machine doesn't look, machine does not respond with soul. And that's what he only realized too late. The woman, once so determined, now avoided going out in the morning. The neighbors noticed, the children asked, but no one had the courage to say out loud that that animal carried more than just cargo. It carried the dignity of the house, and she was taken away. The ox on the other side no longer expected justice, no return, nor salvation, but he carried a scar inside him, a mark that not even time would be able to erase, the mark of ingratitude, the pain of someone who gave everything and was discarded. And that, even though he didn't say it, was there, in his eyes. A look that no longer sought connection, but only accepted the end. And it was in that look, in that last look, that everything broke. Because there, Even without tears, even without sound, even without words, he died inside. Faith died. Trust died. The hope that kindness would be recognized died. And that's exactly what hurts so much about this story, knowing that there are loyal hearts being erased every day without anyone noticing, that there are beings, human or not, who continue to donate themselves, even when there is no more love than other side. Maybe you who are watching now have also experienced something similar. Maybe you were also too faithful to those who never valued you. Maybe you believed in a fake smile, trusted an empty word, expected too much from someone who never had the courage to keep you close. And if this touched you deeply, comment below, "I've already died inside too." Or if you prefer, just comment, "Silence also hurts." Because sometimes we just need a space where our pain is respected. And that's what this video is. A place where real stories resonate, where pain is not ignored, where the truth is felt. And you who are here until now are part of this. If that moment moved you, if that last look hurt somewhere inside, leave your comment. Because only those who have suffered in silence understand the weight of an unsaid goodbye. Let's continue together. The next part still has something to show you, and you need to see it.